Well, thank you for joining me today, and I want to thank Mark Pugsley for participating and sharing his expertise as a practitioner in this space, investment and security fraud. So on Monday, the United States House of Representatives passed my legislation to strengthen consumer protections for the victims of investment fraud and Ponzi schemes. We've all heard of notorious scammers such as Bernie Madoff, an individual who operated a long-running fraudulent operation on innocent investors and all the while used his stolen money to enrich himself and to enjoy a lavish lifestyle. Another such individual was Charles Kokesh. He owned a financial investment firm, quote-unquote financial investment firm, for over 10 years. And in that time, he stole millions of dollars from the companies and over the funds that he advised. He was convicted, and he was ordered to pay a civil penalty, but due to time limitations imposed by the United States Supreme Court in a landmark decision in 2017, Charles Kokesh only had to repay $5 million of the $35 million that he had taken in stolen funds. He profited to the tune of $30 million. Not a bad work for a decade fraudster. The Securities and Exchange Commission, which successfully went after Charles Kokesh, was hampered in returning victims' money. A Supreme Court ruling said that returning the ill-gotten gains was subject to a 5-year statute of limitations. So they changed, where there was previously no statute of limitations, imposed a 5-year statute of limitations so that they could only look back, the Securities and Exchange Commission could only go back 5 years in order to recover funds that were taken. These investment frauds are complicated and take time to unravel and time to get to the bottom of them. And white-collar criminals that run them are pretty good at covering their tracks. So SEC investigations like this can take years, and court action must be pursued over a long period of time. Those people at the federal level, at the Securities and Exchange Commission, who are going after fraudsters, they need the tools to ensure that when they prevail, that innocent victims of that scam have some chance to get back at least some of their hard-earned money. This crime is sadly prevalent in Utah, which has seen more than its fair share of Ponzi schemes and investment frauds. And Mark's going to talk about that a little bit more as someone who's on the front lines of this litigation. In my view, it's wrong that fraudsters not only cheat people, but they also profit from their wrongdoing because of this 2017 Supreme Court decision. So what my legislation does, that passed on Monday, a week ago, my legislation restores to the Securities and Exchange Commission an appropriate timeline to recover funds from victims who have been defrauded. That's money that's rightfully restored to people who were cheated, people who need those funds for retirement and to pass along to their children and their grandchildren. Republicans and Democrats agreed with me. In a time in Washington that's incredibly divisive, my legislation passed with 314 votes, overwhelming support from Republicans and Democrats. It was a bipartisan bill that I ran with my co-sponsor, Representative Huizenga. There is also a similar bill in the Senate, so we are hopeful that this law that I have passed the House will ultimately become law and signed by the President. Consumer protection is something that I've fought for my entire career in public office, and I'm happy that I was able to pass this legislation in this area of law. So, Mark, if you'd like to speak as to what this can mean to victims.
Sure.
Thank you.
First of all, I'd like to thank Representative McAdams for inviting me to participate in this today. Back in the olden days when he was in the Senate, we worked together on some legislation on the state level that resulted in Utah's first investment fraud whistleblower statute, and that's still in use today and is a wonderful tool for victims of fraud to be able to seek compensation for their losses. I've been representing victims of investment fraud here in Utah for about 25 years now. Seems like a long time, but through the course of my career, I've seen how difficult it is for people to recover their losses. And in most cases, if they can't afford to hire a private attorney to try to help them, they have to turn to regulators. In cases, if there's a significant fraud, victims turn to the SEC for help in getting their money back. And the problem is when the Kokesh decision was handed down by the Supreme Court of the United States, it severely limited the SEC's ability to recover those funds or to recover all of the funds. They were limited to a 5-year statute of limitations for the first time. And I believe Jay Clayton, the head of the SEC, has said that they've had to give up almost $1 billion in potential recovery for victims of fraud, which is a huge amount of money, and that's just in 2 years. So this is fixing that, and I'm honored to be here today to support Representative McAdams in this legislation that is going to be able to lead to significantly greater recoveries for victims of fraud here in Utah and throughout the United States.
Thank you. Well, I don't know if members of the media have any questions. I will just say this, as Mark mentioned, this is an area that's important to me from the time that I served in the Utah State Senate. My background prior to public service, I am a securities attorney and taught securities regulation here at the University of Utah Law School as an adjunct professor, and then practiced in this area with law firms both in New York and also here in Utah. So it's an area where I have a professional background, but also it's one that I think is personal. You know, we talk about how Utah has more than our fair share of Ponzi schemes and these type of investment frauds and affinity frauds. And for me, I feel like those people who are perpetrating these frauds, they are preying upon what I love about Utah and the reason that I've chosen to raise my kids and my family here in Utah. Utah, we are quick to trust. We're quick to see the best in others and to extend a hand of friendship. And is that attribute that I love about living in Utah, is that very attribute that they are preying upon. Our greatest strength, they turn into our greatest weakness as they prey upon us to defraud hardworking people of their retirement and things that they've saved for a lifetime. And so that's why it's personal to me and why I think it's important that we make available to the Securities and Exchange Commission and other authorities the ability to crack down on these frauds and to recover those funds that they've taken away from people illegally, and that we have every recourse to go after them and to recover against their ill-gotten gains. So thank you.